Hi, I'm Catherine, and welcome back to Taking Tea with Catherine. This is not very interesting tea today. This is buttermint tea, which I've had before on this channel, and I'm drinking it because I just needed something to relax me that isn't complicated because I had a lot of dessert today, and actually yesterday. But I'll tell you about what I did today. But first, I'm going to talk a little bit about what I've read so far this month because we are in Victober and I need to do a check in. And yeah, I've been really enjoying this month. I've really enjoyed what I've read so far. The volume of the amount of books I've read have actually been a lot lower than most months for me. Because I read a really long book, and that's okay because I'm more into enjoying the ride than hitting all of my TBR goals for this month, if that makes sense. Not that I don't want to hit all the TBR, but I'm fine. I'm fine if I don't. I would just like to do as much as possible while it not being a chore. And it's not a chore so far. I really like it. Also, I'm not a very fast reader, just like I'm not a very fast eater. For instance, if you're sitting at a table with me and everybody's eating, I will probably be one of the last people to finish. And it's not because I spent so much time savoring everything I've eaten and trying to figure out the nuances of flavors. I'm just not a fast eater. And that's okay. But I'm also like that with reading. I'm not the slowest reader I know, but I just can't rush through things because if I feel like I'm rushing, I probably am not getting it. But I'm also not studying things too deep either. So I think I have a good balance. But anyway, so I'll tell you what I've read so far. And I did the first group read challenge. Challenge? The first group read, which is Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Earnest. How am I forgetting this already? Which was amazing. Of course, I did not read this whole book because, whew. And I also started A Woman of No Importance. A lot of importance going on there, and which I like so far, which I only just started though, so I can't really talk about it. And I'm not going to go too much into The Importance of Being Earnest. It is one of his most beloved plays, and it is hilarious, and it's full of all the Oscar Wilde good things. The wit, the irony, the humor, the just the characters that are all sort of different in their own way, but they're all quirky. And I love it. I loved it, and I would read it again, and I would watch it performed again. And so great choice, hosts. And I also completed, which I'm really happy about, is Can You Forgive Her? I completed it today. I had today off. I took today off actually because it's a holiday in America, but I didn't get it off, but I took it anyway, which is good because I finally got to finish this book. It's taken me all of 2 weeks to finish. Worth it though. Really loved it. Again, I do love Trollope, but this made me love him more. I don't know how to explain it. He is different than Dickens. Not so different that it's weird, but he has a lot of different characters that tend to be kind of interrelated, but they don't, I don't know. They're not, well, no, Dickens has complicated characters too. I really enjoy his stuff, but I find that Trollope has a lot of people with many dimensions, and there's rarely someone who is just all bad or all good so far. There is one character that is pretty much the most unredeemable character, but the book is called Can You Forgive Her? And even though it's mentioned numerous times in the book that he's speaking of Alice Vavasor, who has a little habit of jilting her fiancés. She's not evil whatsoever, but her reasons are a little bit, it's more of can you understand her? But I guess in Victorian times you could say, well, what is she doing? This doesn't make sense to our ways. But I think even Trollope kind of understood that. He understood that the whole deal of marriage, there's so many things that go into it, and you kind of have to understand people's reasonings of why they do things and don't do things. But when I say that, even though she's kind of the main character, even though it's the first the Palliser novels. The Pallisers don't show up in this edition until at least page 200. So, yeah, it took a while. But there are a number of, it's women mostly. There are a number of women in this story that aren't bad people, but they make some mistakes, or they almost contemplate making mistakes, or they have well-intentioned actions or words that lead to bad things. And really, you think to yourself, can you forgive them as well? Because a lot of the men, except for one character who tends to not so much redeem himself, but um, he sort of fixes the things that he maybe overlooked. But the other male characters don't really want to be forgiven, if that makes sense. The females sort of do, although Alice Vavasor kind of doesn't care if certain people forgive her, but she does, and she kind of doesn't know if she should even forgive herself. But I think in the end, not without giving away any spoilers, I think she's forgivable. I think she really is. And I think everybody is forgivable, especially the ones who want forgiveness. And not every bad guy is all bad. There's a character whose name is awesome. His name is Burgo Fitzgerald, and he's kind of a ne'er-do-well. You know, there's a lot of these males, I mean, it could happen to females too, but in this particular story, there's a lot of these men who, I don't know, they're not terrible people, but they don't really do anything particularly useful. And they can't seem to keep money, and they can't seem to get a job. So they might go to certain measures and not always great. They may live extravagantly and have debts and whatever. So like someone like Burger Fitzgerald, for the most part, everything he does is pretty much, like useless person, and mistaken. But he also does one thing, which I'm not going to say what it is, even though it doesn't really have anything to do with the plot. But he does one thing sort of in the middle of the story that's kind of nice. I don't even know what his intentions were toward this person, and you see he's got something good about him, but I don't know. Anyway, so there's a lot of interesting people. I liked the Pallisers. They were an interesting couple. Glencora Palliser, that name sounds like a whiskey. Plantagenet Palliser, what a great name. I mean, just a great name. And I'm pretty sure they're the characters who are going to last throughout the series. So I'm glad that I liked their story enough. I'm not really sure how I feel about Glencora Palliser. She's a little, sometimes annoyingly kind of spoiled, but not a bad person. So, like, not a mean person, I would say. Anyway, and there's a lot of rich relatives, and there's one particular character whose story is kind of a side story, but it's still related to other people in the story, literally, like blood relation. So there's Mrs. Greenow, and she is a widow. She had married someone quite older than her who had a good amount of money. So she became a rich widow. And she sort of strings along a few people who, it's just like a love triangle, sort of a love triangle. And the characters, the men who are sort of fighting for her attention and for her love are, it's kind of hilarious, the story. A little sad, but hilarious. Not tragic, just, And she does kind of string people along, and then she does sort of go back to her being a widow. She is recently widowed, but she wears the full widow's weeds, as they say, so very, I mean, the time period, the Victorian time period, that was like the most dramatic time to be a widow. So she makes use of it. So her character is kind of fun too. So there's a lot of interesting people, a lot of interesting plot. And you as you're reading it, you kind of hope it's going to turn out a certain way, and generally, it goes around the right direction without giving anything away, but it's just really how it gets there and what people have to work through. I loved it. I thought it was a great story. If you like Trollope, I think you'll like this. Even if you haven't tried Trollope, this might not be a bad place to start. I don't know. There could be other ones that are better. Maybe the Warden and the Barsetshire might be better, but still. And I was actually very happy to see that Katie from Books and Things is doing a little series this week about the Pallisers. That's actually really exciting because having just finished my first one, it's just nice to see, coverage by one of the experts. So that's great. So those are the two things I finished. I'm still reading The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes and loving it, as always. I am about to start the Frances/Fanny Trollope Hargrave. I think it's called Hargrave. Yeah. I really got to get started on that. I have to start the George Meredith book, The Ordeal of Richard Feverel. So I have to get on that. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with the can't think of the word, candles. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it because even though my one cat has never been trouble with candles, my second cat gets into everything and I'm not sure if it's worth the risk. But we'll see. If I do it, I'll try to do something for you guys on BookTube. But we'll see. If not, can't do everything. But I'd like to try. It would be a cool thing to try and fun, I guess. So what else? Oh, just a little side thing that I was thinking of. I really want to look into this. I don't know why, but not just this book, even though this book talks about a lot, but a lot of books that I've read, especially in the Victorian time, but even before and afterwards, there's always something about gentlemen's clubs, not like the strip clubs that exist nowadays, but the men's clubs, I'll just call it the men's club, that I want to do more research on. Because I think it's such an interesting concept that they may have forms of it that exist now. Like, not far from where I work is the Yale Club, which is an exclusive club. I think membership is only open to people who are Yale alumni. And I think it's open to women as well now, I would hope. But I've never been in there as of yet. Yeah, I just like the idea of it. I don't know if I like it or I just am interested in the idea of how, because there's at least 3 or 4 characters in Can You Forgive Her who go to their clubs, and they have people that there sometimes that they'll talk to, but sometimes it's just people know where to find them. Sometimes they'll hang out there, they'll eat there, they'll read there, whatever they do. Some of them practically live there. And I don't know, it's just weird that I guess I understand why they existed, but it's such a strange concept. I mean, even with Sherlock Holmes, there was a lot about, not in the stories I've read so far, but Sherlock Holmes' brother, Mycroft, belonged to a club called the Diogenes Club, which is basically founded on the idea of silence. So people don't make noise there. I guess they have certain rooms where they can receive people and they can talk, but most people there just don't talk. And someone like me, I would love something like that. Even though I'm chatty, it would be nice to have a place to go for quiet that is based on quietude. That is very cool. Especially if people could eat in silence. Hello. But, so I don't know. I would like to just do research. It's like a little project in my head that I have that I want to learn more about how people were affected by Gentlemen's Club and how many parts of literature took place in these clubs. I don't know. Have you guys ever thought about that? If so, leave a comment down below about that. I would love to talk about what you've learned about gentlemen's clubs or what your impressions are even. All right, so that's basically the reading that I've done so far. I've watched at least one documentary about Queen Victoria this month so far. It wasn't the best one, but it was one thing I thought was interesting. They showed a picture of her later in life showing up to some function or other wearing white, and it was I don't remember seeing that picture, and it was so weird. Remember I was talking about the widows? It was so weird seeing her out of her widow's garb at that point in her life that I don't know. It just interested me. I know it's a side point, but I just had to mention it. So the last thing I'm going to mention, because that's basically what I've read this month, but today was my day off, and I wanted to devote it to reading and kind of Victorian themes. Not strictly Victorian themes, but not to stray too far from it. I slept in, which could be Victorian, I don't know, for some people. Maybe not the workers of the Victorian times, but, the fancy people. And hung out with my cats, which sometimes is Victorian. And the day was beautiful, which isn't Victorian at all. But the weather was gorgeous, and I took the subway, which is sort of Victorian. Okay, I don't like to analyze it that much. I took the train down to Greenwich Village, and first I did some book shopping. So I told myself this month I wouldn't buy any books. It was my book buying ban month, which failed miserably. So miserably. And now I have a few more trollops. And that's good because I have the next one in the Plantagenet, in the Palliser series, so that's kind of fun. And I was all used books, so I got a good deal on them. And yeah, so that was fun. And then I had afternoon tea, which is, you cannot get more Victorian than that, because it was basically an invention of the Victorian times. And I went to a tea parlor called Bosie Tea Parlor, which I'd been to before in its previous location in the West Village, but they've moved east near Soho, off Bleecker Street, in case you are interested. And oh, I loved it. I treated myself to afternoon tea, which I haven't done in ages. I'm going to pay for it later, but I really, really loved it. So, one thing about the name Bosie, if you have done any reading up on Oscar Wilde's life, you will recognize the name. It was a nickname given to Oscar Wilde's lover, whose relationship got him in the long run into the trouble that landed him in jail, and probably shortened his life, to be honest. But I don't think that was his intention, but that's just what happened. And either way, I don't really know much about him particularly, but, beyond his involvement in Oscar Wilde's life. But I like the tea room, and I thought it was kind of interesting to name it after him. But the last location, I think, had more Oscar Wilde themed things around. I didn't see so much of that this time, although it's French. It's French tea room, not an English tea room. Although afternoon tea is British and stuff, but it was French influenced. And Oscar Wilde died. Yeah, he had a telephone. He died in France, so I guess that is sort of on theme. So the food was just great. The tea was good. I had a Glenburn, not Glencora. It was a Darjeeling. I usually get Darjeeling when I get afternoon tea. It's just a thing I like to do. Darjeeling, second flush, which if you don't know about what tea, I don't want to explain right now because not enough time. But very delicious tea, and I had different sandwiches, some interesting ones, like a ham and marmalade, I think it was, and lemon chicken, which was delicious. I'm obviously not vegetarian, and then your standard cucumber sandwich. You got to do that. The scones were really good. They were shaped like the triangle ones, but they tasted like the British ones, and they had plenty of clotted cream. Very good. Different petit four, different kinds of pastry. So good, so indulgent, and yeah, I felt very, very spoiled, and I have to drink peppermint tea now, or buttermint tea, or whatever this is, but it was so good. Afterwards, I walked to Washington Square Park, which is nearby, which is slightly Victorian, because I don't know what you call it. When a park opens, I guess, in the 1870s. So it was during the time of Queen Victoria, but just in New York. And I don't know, there's something nice about sitting in a park and reading and seeing the people going by. There was one lady who looked very pre-Raphaelite, which is also Victorian. She kind of resembled, what's her name? Florence Welch, I think. You know, the singer? Anyway, kind of resembled her, so that was kind of fun. And she was carrying books. It just felt slightly Victorian. And that's when I finished Can You Forgive Her? So, not that exact moment when she went by, obviously. And so, yeah, I had a really lovely, lovely day. The weather was amazing. Sitting in that park. I don't go to Washington Square Park that often, but it was just so peaceful today. People were playing music on a saxophone and little light drums. It felt kind of jazzy, which isn't really Victorian, but that's okay. Not everything has to be exactly on point, on theme, on whatever. But it was, yeah, it was a great day. And so far, it's been a great month. I have enjoyed doing this Victober so much. And even though I'm definitely going to be reading Victorian novels for, in the months to come, I just love staying just within that time and place for now. It's just a great immersion, and I recommend it to anyone who isn't doing it, but probably you guys are doing it. I've been really enjoying, I can't even list all the videos I've been watching on BookTube covering Victober. I love seeing what everybody else is reading and what they're doing for Victober, and people have different takes on different Victorian customs and hobbies and etc. And then I got stuck there. Kate Howe has a lovely series in Victober where she's opening up with almost like a slideshow music presentation opening theme, which is glorious. It is, I think, basically the theme for this month for everybody. If it's not in your head by now, watch it. It will be. And I'm sure you guys who are watching this probably have watched her videos as well, because she's one of the hosts. So you should be. And yeah, okay, so I love Victober, and I'm sure I'm going to do it again next year, and I will let you know more about what I've read, as in the weeks to come. And I hope you guys are reading wonderful books, and any recommendations that you have, or any comments about anything I've talked about, down below, as you know. Alright, this has been Catherine from Taking Tea with Catherine, and a little cameo by Freddie, of whom candles are a risk. Have a lovely day.